This is another one of those early songs that kind of flies under the radar, but if you dig into it, there's a lot going on. Written mostly by Paul McCartney in 1964, it ultimately ended up not as a single, but as an album track. Originally, McCartney thought it might have been their next big hit after A Hard Day's Night, but that didn't happen. Still, it's got that classic Beatles charm and some interesting production choices that make it worth a closer listen.
Every little thing she does.
So, Paul wrote this song during their first US tour in the summer of '64, probably with Jane Asher in mind, though he never confirmed that. At the time, Paul was living at the Ashers' house, and like a lot of Beatles songs, it came together on guitar. He took it to the band, and while Lennon did pitch in a bit, he admitted later, "It's Paul's song." McCartney was hoping Every Little Thing would be a single, but it didn't quite have the juice for that. Paul himself said it was catchy, but apparently not quite catchy enough. So instead, it became part of Beatles for Sale in the UK and later showed up on Beatles 6 in the US. It's got that light, easygoing vibe that you hear in a lot of McCartney's early songs, but maybe it didn't pack the punch the band was looking for at the time. Despite its album filler status, the song has its fans. Progressive rock band Yes even covered it in 1969, turning the short 2-minute track into a much bigger, more experimental piece.
And you know the thing she does.
That cover gave the song a second life and reminded people of the original's cool little quirks. The recording for Every Little Thing kicked off on September 29, 1964 at Abbey Road Studios. But the real standout here is Ringo on the timpani. If you're not familiar with what a timpani is, well, they are those big, booming drums usually reserved for symphonies. It was the first time they'd used them on a Beatles track, and it gave the song a little extra punch in places you wouldn't expect. Paul also added some low piano notes. John laid down a simple but effective lead guitar riff. It's not the most complex Beatles song, but the layering of instruments gives it some real texture. It's a charming and lighthearted song, and the harmonies between John and Paul are spot on. Plus, there's just something satisfying about the simplicity of the arrangement. It's refreshingly uncomplicated, and is a great example of the Beatles before they got really experimental. So, if you haven't given Every Little Thing a real listen in a while, it's worth revisiting. It might not be a hit, but it's still got that magic only the Beatles could pull off.